We often think that loyalty means staying close to people, no matter what. Family or friends are supposed to be forever, and it feels wrong to distance ourselves from them. But life is short, and our peace of mind is precious. There are times when the people around us harm us more than they help. We must learn to recognize when relationships drain us, instead of uplift us. Constant negativity is one of the first signs that a relationship may be harmful. When someone in your life always complains, criticizes, or focuses on the worst aspects of every situation, it slowly chips away at your own sense of calm and balance. Humans are naturally influenced by the energy around them. If you spend your time with someone who constantly projects frustration, anger, or pessimism, you begin to absorb those feelings without even realizing it. Your mind, which should be a place of clarity and reason, becomes clouded with worry and doubt. You start seeing challenges as insurmountable, setbacks as disasters, and ordinary moments as problems rather than opportunities. Life is full of difficulties, but our response to them defines the quality of our existence. The company you keep shapes those responses more than you might think. When negativity becomes a habit in someone's words and actions, it is not a reflection of the world, it is a reflection of their inner state. And their inner state can silently invade yours. Over time, constant exposure to negative energy can change how you perceive people, situations, and even yourself. You may find that small annoyances trigger larger reactions, or that you feel drained and heavy after every interaction. Your thoughts, which once felt steady, begin to wobble. Your emotions, which once felt manageable, start to feel turbulent. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within your control becomes difficult to practice when your mind is constantly occupied with someone else's negativity. You cannot control their behavior, but you can choose how much you allow it to affect you. Distance is not about punishment or rejection, it is about preservation. It is about protecting the mind from repeated exposure to patterns that reduce your capacity for reason, patience, and inner peace. By noticing constant negativity, you are not being harsh or unforgiving, you are simply observing reality as it is. People are free to act as they choose, but you are equally free to decide who has access to your time, energy, and thoughts. Remaining in an environment of continual pessimism often leads to subtle but significant harm. Your productivity may decline, your confidence may falter, and your sense of hope may diminish. Even your relationships with others who are positive and supportive can be affected because the weight of constant negativity colors your perception of the world. One way to assess this is to reflect on how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel lighter, more motivated, more peaceful? Or do you feel tired, frustrated, anxious, or irritated? These emotional clues are not trivial. They are messages from your own mind telling you what nourishes it and what diminishes it. Recognizing the impact of constant negativity is not an act of judgment toward the other person. It is an act of self-awareness and self-respect. Choosing to step back, limit exposure, or adjust expectations does not make you weak or unkind. It makes you wise, because wisdom begins with understanding the nature of influence, including the influence of those closest to you. The mind, once clouded by negativity, can regain clarity when it is surrounded by reason, calm, and constructive engagement. This does not mean you abandon empathy or refuse to help when appropriate, but it does mean you do not allow yourself to be consumed by someone else's habitual complaints and criticisms. You can offer support when it is constructive, but you are not obligated to endure ongoing toxicity. By creating boundaries around constant negativity, you protect your own capacity to think clearly, act effectively, and maintain emotional stability, which in turn allows you to live a life guided by virtue and purpose. Lack of respect is a powerful sign that a relationship may be harmful. Respect is the foundation upon which all healthy connections are built, and without it, interactions become a source of tension and harm rather than support and growth. When someone consistently dismisses your feelings, belittles your choices, or ignores your boundaries, it communicates that your mind, your emotions, and your values do not matter to them. Over time, this erodes your self-esteem and disturbs the balance of your inner life. Respect is not only about politeness or courtesy. It is about recognizing the inherent dignity and autonomy of another person. When this recognition is absent, it is easy to lose sight of your own worth. Being around someone who lacks respect forces you to defend yourself constantly, to explain your choices, and to tolerate judgments that are neither fair nor helpful. This becomes exhausting because you are compelled to expend energy on proving your value instead of living in alignment with your principles. The Stoic perspective emphasizes focusing on what is within your control, yet repeated exposure to disrespect challenges this principle because it tests your patience and your sense of justice. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control how much access they have to your life and your emotions. By noticing a lack of respect, you begin to see clearly that some relationships demand more effort to maintain than they give in return. Words matter, but actions matter even more. If someone repeatedly interrupts you, dismisses your opinions, or makes decisions for you without consent, it demonstrates a disregard for your autonomy. This is not a trivial matter. Autonomy is the cornerstone of a life lived with reason and purpose. When someone continually undermines it, your capacity to act rationally and calmly is compromised. You may start doubting your judgment, second-guessing your decisions, or feeling anxious about expressing your thoughts openly. Relationships that lack respect also interfere with growth. They encourage conformity, fear, and hesitation, rather than curiosity, courage, and clarity. Over time, you may unconsciously adjust your behavior to avoid criticism or disapproval, sacrificing your true self in the process. The consequences of this are subtle but profound. Your mind becomes less free, your heart less confident, and your spirit less resilient. It is crucial to recognize that respect is reciprocal. If you give respect but do not receive it, the relationship is unbalanced. This imbalance is not a reflection of weakness on your part. It is a reflection of the reality of human interaction. By stepping back or limiting engagement with those who show a lack of respect, you preserve your dignity and protect the integrity of your choices. Boundaries become essential tools in this process. They are not barriers of anger or revenge. They are structures of clarity and self-preservation. When someone violates them repeatedly, it is a clear sign that the relationship cannot function in harmony with your values. Understanding this allows you to act with reason instead of emotion, to detach from conflict without harboring resentment. Over time, this approach fosters peace of mind and a more deliberate life. You learn to invest in relationships that nurture growth, trust, and mutual regard, rather than draining energy and creating tension. It is not an act of cruelty to distance yourself from someone who shows a lack of respect. It is an act of wisdom because life is too short to tolerate consistent disregard, and the mind, once burdened by disrespect, cannot perform at its highest capacity. Recognizing this reality allows you to focus on what truly matters, maintaining inner calm, living with integrity, and surrounding yourself with those who value your presence, your choices, and your principles. Manipulation is a quiet but destructive sign that a relationship may be harmful. It often begins subtly, with small requests, suggestions, or hints designed to sway your actions or emotions. Over time, these small intrusions grow into patterns that limit your freedom and cloud your judgment. Manipulation can take many forms: guilt-tripping, twisting your words, exaggerating situations, or appealing to your emotions in order to influence your decisions. The person doing this may claim it is for your own good or insist that they know what is best for you. But in reality, manipulation is about control, not care. One of the dangers of manipulation is that it slowly erodes self-trust. You begin to doubt your instincts, question your decisions, and feel anxious about whether you are doing the right thing. When someone consistently manipulates you, your mind is no longer fully your own. It becomes a battlefield where their influence competes with your reason and judgment. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within your control applies directly here. You cannot force someone to act ethically or sincerely, but you can choose how much access they have to your thoughts, decisions, and life. By recognizing manipulation, you regain the power to reclaim your mind. Awareness is the first step. When you notice patterns of guilt, pressure, or deception, you can separate their influence from your own reasoning. You can pause before responding, reflect on your true values, and act deliberately rather than reacting automatically. This is how freedom is preserved in relationships that threaten it. Manipulation also undermines trust, which is the foundation of any healthy connection. Trust is built on honesty, consistency, and mutual respect. When someone manipulates you, they break that trust repeatedly, and the relationship loses its balance. It is important to see clearly that continuing to allow manipulation is not an act of patience or loyalty. It is an act of self-neglect. Over time, habitual manipulation can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and confusion. You may feel trapped, anxious, or emotionally exhausted. These are signs that the relationship is not nourishing but depleting. Maintaining boundaries becomes essential. You can limit interactions, clearly communicate your limits, or step away from situations where manipulation occurs. This is not about punishment or revenge, it is about protecting your inner life and preserving your capacity to act rationally. Recognizing manipulation also encourages personal growth. By refusing to be influenced unfairly, you strengthen your judgment, reinforce your values, and cultivate resilience. You learn to respond with reason rather than emotion, and to maintain your dignity even in difficult interactions. Relationships should enhance life, not distort it. Manipulation distorts reality, forcing you to question what is true, what is fair, and what is your own choice. By identifying manipulation and acting to limit its impact, you create space for relationships that are honest, supportive, and balanced. In these healthier connections, influence is mutual, not coercive, and guidance is offered rather than imposed. The mind thrives in environments where trust and freedom are honored. When you distance yourself from manipulative behavior, you are not being harsh or unforgiving. You are acting in alignment with your own principles. You are prioritizing clarity over confusion, autonomy over coercion, and inner peace over external pressure. This approach allows you to live with integrity, act deliberately, and invest your energy where it truly matters, with people who respect your capacity to think, choose, and live freely. Repeated betrayal is one of the most significant indicators that a relationship may be harmful. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful connection, whether it is with family, friends, or close companions. Without trust, no relationship can truly flourish, and repeated violations of trust slowly erode the sense of safety, respect, and stability that is essential for emotional well-being. Betrayal does not always appear as a dramatic act. It can be small but consistent, breaking promises, withholding important information, taking advantage of your vulnerability, or failing to honor commitments. Each instance chips away at the bond, and the cumulative effect can be devastating. When betrayal is repeated, it is no longer an isolated incident or a moment of human error. It becomes a pattern that reveals the other person's priorities and values. They may claim to care for you, but their actions demonstrate otherwise. This is important to recognize because actions define reality more than words do. A single act of betrayal might be forgivable, especially when it is accompanied by genuine remorse and a change in behavior. However, when the same harmful actions occur again and again, it signals that the individual is unwilling or unable to act with integrity. Continuing to invest time, energy, and emotion in such a relationship is a choice that may lead to prolonged suffering. Repeated betrayal also challenges your own sense of judgment and discernment. Each time someone breaks your trust, you are forced to question your decisions, reassess your understanding of them, and sometimes even doubt your own intuition. Over time, this undermines confidence and increases emotional vulnerability. The Stoic perspective teaches that we cannot control the actions of others, but we can control how we respond to them. Recognizing patterns of betrayal allows you to make deliberate choices about whom you allow into your life, and what influence they have over your mind and heart. It is not an act of cruelty to distance yourself from someone who repeatedly betrays your trust. It is an act of wisdom, because it preserves your own integrity and emotional stability. Trust is not something to be handed out lightly. It is earned through consistent, honorable behavior. When someone repeatedly violates that trust, they demonstrate that they do not value the relationship in the same way that you do. Allowing such behavior to continue unchecked is an invitation to ongoing pain and disappointment. Furthermore, repeated betrayal can have ripple effects beyond the immediate relationship. It can influence how you view others, making it harder to trust new people, or to form healthy bonds in the future. By addressing betrayal and establishing boundaries, you protect not only the present relationship but also your capacity to engage meaningfully with others in the long term. Distance does not mean hostility or anger. It means choosing clarity over confusion, stability over chaos, and peace over repeated harm. It allows you to focus on relationships where trust is mutual, values are respected, and integrity is honored. In the absence of such relationships, your energy, attention, and emotional resources are better spent elsewhere. Recognizing repeated betrayal and responding with deliberate action is a mark of strength. It is an acknowledgement that your inner life, your principles, and your sense of safety are worth protecting. It is a commitment to live with reason, not reaction, and to prioritize the company of those who uplift, support, and act in alignment with your values. A lack of support is a subtle but powerful sign that a relationship may not be healthy for you. True relationships, whether with family or friends, are built on mutual care, understanding, and presence. They are meant to provide a balance in life's struggles, to offer encouragement, and to help each person grow through challenges. When someone consistently fails to offer support, it communicates that they are not invested in your well-being in a meaningful way. This absence can take many forms. They may be physically absent during difficult times, emotionally unavailable when you need empathy, or dismissive of your goals and dreams. Over time, the lack of support becomes a pattern, and it is easy to internalize this as a reflection of your own worth. You may begin to doubt whether you are deserving of help, whether your efforts matter, or whether your dreams are attainable. The danger is not only in the absence of help but also in the emotional cost of constantly seeking it. Seeking support from someone who is unwilling or unable to provide it drains energy, creates frustration, and undermines your ability to focus on what truly matters. It is important to remember that no one is obligated to meet all of our needs, but consistent neglect or absence signals that the relationship is unbalanced. Stoic thought emphasizes the importance of focusing on what is within your control. You cannot force someone to care or act in alignment with your needs, but you can control the boundaries you establish and the relationships you choose to invest in. By recognizing a lack of support, you gain clarity about where your energy is best spent and where it is being wasted. This recognition is not about judgment or resentment. It is about understanding reality and acting wisely. A supportive relationship provides more than occasional help. It creates a foundation of trust, reassurance, and collaboration. When these elements are missing, the connection cannot serve its intended purpose. Life will inevitably bring challenges, failures, and setbacks. Facing these alone is not a sign of weakness, but continually relying on someone who is not present can create unnecessary hardship and emotional strain. By stepping back or limiting engagement, you create space for relationships that provide true support, guidance, and encouragement. Recognizing a lack of support also fosters self-reliance and resilience. When you understand that some people cannot or will not provide what you need, you learn to cultivate inner strength and seek constructive alliances elsewhere. You no longer waste time and energy attempting to change someone else or waiting for them to act differently. This awareness allows you to focus on what is real and achievable, your own growth, your own integrity, and the relationships that genuinely nurture your well-being. Emotional resources are limited, and investing them wisely is essential for living a deliberate and balanced life. Surrounding yourself with those who consistently fail to support you is like building a home on unstable ground. It may look solid at first, but cracks appear under pressure, and the structure cannot endure the challenges of life. By contrast, relationships built on mutual support provide stability, encouragement, and a shared sense of purpose. They allow you to face difficulties with confidence, knowing that your efforts are recognized and your struggles are met with understanding, rather than indifference. Choosing to step away from relationships that lack support is not a rejection of loyalty or family bonds. It is a conscious act of preservation. It is an acknowledgement that your life, your energy, and your peace of mind are worth protecting, and that investing in connections that nourish rather than deplete you is a mark of wisdom. Controlling behavior is a clear signal that a relationship may be harmful, even when it comes from someone you care about deeply. Some people attempt to dictate how you live, what choices you make, who you spend time with, and even what you think or feel. This is not love, guidance, or concern. It is control, and control is fundamentally incompatible with a healthy relationship. Every individual has the right to govern their own life, make decisions based on reason, and pursue their values freely. When someone imposes their will on you repeatedly, it erodes your autonomy, undermines your judgment, and diminishes your confidence. The danger of controlling behavior is that it often appears subtle at first. It may begin as suggestions, advice, or persistent opinions. But over time, the pressure grows, and your decisions become influenced more by fear of conflict or disapproval than by your own reasoned judgment. This gradual encroachment is deceptive because it disguises harm as care, and yet the effect is the same. Your mind, which should be your sanctuary of clarity, begins to feel like a battlefield where someone else's desires compete with your own principles. In Stoic thought, the mind is the most valuable possession we have, and protecting it from outside interference is essential to living a deliberate life. Controlling behavior violates this principle because it shifts power away from you and toward another person, often leaving you feeling trapped, anxious, or hesitant to act. Recognizing this behavior is crucial because awareness is the first step toward reclaiming your freedom. You may notice patterns: constant criticism when you make choices that differ from their preferences, pressure to conform to expectations, or emotional manipulation to ensure compliance. Over time, these patterns are exhausting because they force you to expend mental and emotional energy defending your autonomy instead of engaging with life purposefully. Healthy relationships respect boundaries, honor personal choices, and allow each individual to grow independently while still providing mutual support. In contrast, controlling relationships are imbalanced, demanding compliance and often punishing independence. Remaining in such relationships erodes your sense of self. You may begin to doubt your own judgment, suppress your desires, or feel guilty for prioritizing your own needs. This is dangerous because it not only affects your ability to act with reason and integrity, but also compromises your emotional and mental well-being. Establishing boundaries is essential when dealing with controlling behavior. Boundaries are not walls built from anger or resentment. They are structures of clarity and protection. They signal what is acceptable and what is not, preserving your ability to act freely and live according to your principles. When someone repeatedly ignores or violates these boundaries, it is a sign that the relationship cannot function in alignment with your values. Stepping back or limiting engagement is an act of wisdom, not hostility. It demonstrates self-respect, a recognition of your own worth, and a commitment to living deliberately rather than being led by another's will. Freedom is a fundamental aspect of human dignity, and relationships should enhance, not diminish, that freedom. Controlling behavior prevents you from exercising reason, making deliberate choices, and cultivating virtue. By distancing yourself from those who seek to control you, you protect your mind, your principles, and your peace. You create space for connections in which influence is mutual, guidance is respectful, and growth is supported rather than constrained. Living in alignment with your values requires courage, clarity, and the willingness to step away from relationships that undermine the most essential aspects of your life. Toxic influence is one of the most subtle yet damaging signs that a relationship may be harmful. Unlike overt harm, toxic influence can appear as friendly advice, shared habits, or even seemingly harmless encouragement. Over time, however, it leads you away from your values, clouds your judgment, and undermines the principles that guide a good and deliberate life. Toxic influence does not always involve direct attack. It can be quiet, persistent, and insidious. It may encourage you to act against your own moral compass, adopt behaviors that harm your well-being, or question your self-worth. When you spend time with someone whose influence consistently leads you toward poor choices, you risk losing clarity, self-control, and inner peace. The danger of toxic influence is that it often masquerades as support, friendship, or concern. You may find yourself rationalizing harmful advice or dismissing small negative effects because the person seems trustworthy or caring. Over time, this rationalization erodes your judgment and makes it harder to recognize the harm being done. The mind, once clouded by repeated exposure to toxic influence, becomes less able to act in accordance with reason, and emotions become increasingly turbulent. Stoic thought teaches that we must protect our mind and act deliberately, focusing on what is within our control. While we cannot change others or force them to act virtuously, we can control the degree to which we allow their influence to affect us. Recognizing toxic influence is essential for reclaiming this control. Signs of toxic influence may include repeated encouragement to act impulsively, discouragement of your goals or principles, criticism disguised as humor, or patterns of behavior that lead you to compromise your values. These behaviors create confusion and conflict within, making it difficult to distinguish between your own choices and the pressures imposed upon you. A relationship dominated by toxic influence erodes confidence and fosters dependence. You may feel uncertain, anxious, or conflicted about your decisions, and over time, this uncertainty can diminish your capacity to act with reason and integrity. True relationships enhance growth, support moral clarity, and encourage the development of virtue. Toxic influence does the opposite. It nudges you off the path of reason, encourages habits that weaken character, and leaves you feeling exhausted and morally compromised. Addressing toxic influence requires awareness, courage, and the willingness to set clear boundaries. Boundaries are not signs of anger or resentment. They are measures of protection, clarity, and respect for your own mind. They allow you to limit exposure, maintain your principles, and preserve the ability to act deliberately. If someone repeatedly disregards these boundaries or continues to steer you toward harmful choices, it is a clear signal that the relationship cannot function in a healthy and supportive way. Distancing yourself from toxic influence is not an act of hostility, but an act of wisdom. It demonstrates recognition of the value of your own mind, the importance of moral clarity, and the need to prioritize relationships that foster growth rather than depletion. By limiting exposure to toxic influence, you regain focus, strengthen judgment, and protect your inner peace. You create space for relationships that encourage reflection, integrity, and virtuous action. In doing so, you learn to distinguish between those who enhance your life and those who diminish it, allowing you to invest energy, time, and trust where it is most deserved. This approach cultivates resilience, clarity, and freedom, empowering you to navigate life with reason, maintain alignment with your values, and preserve the integrity of your mind. When a relationship consumes more than it gives, it is a clear indication that it may be harmful and unsustainable. Every relationship requires a certain balance of energy, care, and attention. While effort is natural and expected on both sides, there comes a point when the exchange becomes lopsided, and one person is left carrying the weight of the connection alone. This imbalance can manifest in many ways, emotionally, mentally, or even practically. You may find yourself constantly giving advice, offering support, or compromising your own needs, while receiving little in return. Over time, this persistent effort without reciprocity drains the mind, body, and spirit. The Stoic principle emphasizes understanding what is within your control and preserving your inner peace. When a relationship consumes more than it gives, it directly conflicts with this principle, because it forces you to expend energy on someone else's issues, often at the cost of your own stability and growth. You may begin to feel resentful, frustrated, or overwhelmed, even when you genuinely care for the other person. This is not a sign of weakness or lack of compassion. It is a signal from your own mind that the balance has shifted in a way that threatens your well-being. Often these relationships are characterized by recurring demands, emotional dependency, or constant drama. One person becomes the perpetual receiver of attention or support, while the other relies on them without accountability. Over time, this dynamic can distort your perception of what a healthy relationship looks like, normalizing sacrifice without mutual respect, and eroding your capacity to set boundaries. Recognizing this pattern requires honest reflection. Ask yourself, do I feel energized, encouraged, and understood after engaging with this person? Or do I feel drained, anxious, and uncertain? Emotional and mental exhaustion are not inevitable components of connection. They are indicators that the relationship is no longer serving its intended purpose. Relationships should enrich life, not dominate it. They should foster growth, support reasoned choices, and create harmony rather than tension. When one person is giving far more than they receive, the balance is broken, and the mind is pulled away from the deliberate focus necessary for wise action and inner peace. In such situations, boundaries become essential. These boundaries are not punitive or driven by anger. They are expressions of self-respect, clarity, and preservation. Establishing limits allows you to regain control over your time, energy, and attention. It signals to the other person that the current pattern is unsustainable and that mutual respect is required for the relationship to continue healthily. If these boundaries are repeatedly ignored, it is a sign that the relationship is not aligned with your values or capable of providing mutual benefit. Choosing to step back or limit engagement is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of wisdom, demonstrating a commitment to live deliberately and prioritize relationships that are balanced, supportive, and aligned with your principles. By doing so, You protect your inner peace, maintain clarity of mind, and cultivate resilience. You also create space for new relationships that contribute positively to your life, relationships where exchange is reciprocal, respect is mutual, and influence is constructive. Recognizing when a relationship consumes more than it gives requires honesty and courage. It requires observing reality without illusions, valuing your own well-being, and acting deliberately rather than out of obligation or guilt. By making these choices, you preserve your mental and emotional health, honor your own values, and ensure that the relationships you maintain enhance life rather than deplete it. In doing so, you cultivate the freedom to live with reason, maintain clarity in thought, and invest your energy in people and connections that genuinely support your growth, your peace, and your ability to act according to principle. Recognizing your value and choosing peace over chaos is perhaps the most important lesson in understanding when to step away from harmful relationships. Life is full of demands, responsibilities, and people who will seek to influence or control us. Amidst this complexity, it is easy to forget that your mind, your integrity, and your emotional well-being are precious. When relationships consistently disrupt your inner calm, diminish your confidence, or force you to compromise your values, it is a sign that your energy is being invested in ways that are not beneficial. Recognizing your own value is not an act of pride or selfishness. It is an acknowledgement of the fact that your time, thoughts, and actions are limited and must be preserved for pursuits that foster growth, virtue, and peace. Every individual has boundaries, needs, and principles that are essential to their character. To ignore them is to allow life to be dominated by external chaos rather than guided by deliberate reasoning. When you allow disrespect, manipulation, repeated betrayal, lack of support, controlling behavior, toxic influence, or draining relationships to persist, you sacrifice your own peace in favor of maintaining connections that are misaligned with your values. It is not easy to step away from people, especially family or long-term friends, because of the sense of obligation or loyalty we are taught to feel. Yet loyalty should not be confused with self-neglect. True loyalty respects both your integrity and theirs. If a relationship repeatedly violates boundaries or diminishes your well-being, continuing to maintain it is not an act of loyalty. It is an act of surrender to chaos. Choosing peace over chaos means observing reality clearly without illusions, and making decisions that prioritize your own inner stability. It requires courage because it often involves difficult conversations, emotional detachment, or stepping away from people who have been a significant part of your life. However, courage is not about confrontation or aggression. It is about holding fast to your principles and refusing to allow external factors to dictate your emotional state. Recognizing your value allows you to allocate your time and energy wisely. You begin to engage in relationships that are reciprocal, respectful, and constructive, rather than those that demand constant sacrifice or compromise. You cultivate spaces where your growth is supported, your choices are respected, and your mind can operate with clarity and purpose. Choosing peace also involves setting firm boundaries and being consistent in enforcing them. Boundaries are not barriers to love or connection. They are necessary structures that allow healthy interactions to flourish, while preventing relationships from becoming a source of persistent harm or stress. By valuing yourself, you also model behavior for others, demonstrating that integrity, reason, and self-respect are non-negotiable. It sends a clear message that while you can offer empathy, support, and kindness, you will not allow yourself to be diminished, manipulated, or drained. Inner peace becomes a priority, not a luxury, because a life ruled by chaos, conflict, and constant compromise cannot produce wisdom, clarity, or virtue. When you commit to recognizing your value and choosing peace over chaos, you take control of your emotional and mental landscape. You develop resilience, maintain reason in the face of external pressures, and cultivate the freedom to act deliberately rather than reactively. This choice empowers you to focus on relationships that enrich your life rather than deplete it, and to create a life in which your mind is steady, your principles are honored, and your actions are guided by virtue rather than fear, obligation, or manipulation.